Hi, all, and welcome to episode 21 of Plain Speaking Sanjiv. Starting today, I'm going to record these episodes on YouTube directly so that I'm not constrained by the 2 minute, 20-second limit that Twitter has. By doing so, hopefully, I can speak more freely and not rush towards the end. I've received some feedback from some of you that my last couple of episodes, I seem to really, be in a hurry to finish my thoughts, and sometimes it's a little incomplete. And I share that concern, so starting today, I'm going to do it on YouTube. For some of you, it'll mean that you can't directly view it on Twitter or on other media. You have to click through to the YouTube link. Hopefully, that isn't too much of an issue for you. So, today I want to talk about a couple of ways where simple regulatory changes can help airlines in India reduce costs. I'm not going to refer to the COVID situation. I mean, this is a crisis which requires completely different discussions. I'm going to just talk about business as usual, what airlines were operating under before the crisis, and how a couple of changes could have really helped us. Number one is related to the costs that we bear at airports with our staffing. In India, there's a rule that all airlines must have their own security staff and they must be dedicated to security. You cannot share staff with other airlines, and you cannot hire security staff from third-party ground handling agents. So what this means is if you've got one flight a day, and sometimes airlines do have just one flight a day to certain stations, you need to have a minimum of 7 security staff to handle that flight. And imagine having 7 people full-time on your rolls just for handling one flight, coming into work for maybe 2 or 3 hours and going home. That really isn't very efficient. Ground handling staff, which are separate from security staff, the customer service staff, that airlines can hire or take from third parties. But security, we are required to retain our own staff. Now, the rule can be changed so that airlines can share security staff with each other. So if the 3 airlines operating one flight a day each to a smaller airport, as long as the flights are not exactly at the same time, the 3 airlines can share a pool of 7 staff and cut their costs individually by 2/3 for security. Or if you can, in addition to that, allow security staff to cross-train as customer service staff, so that, for example, some staff can be checking in passengers, and when check-in closes, they can move to a security role during the boarding process or during the baggage loading process, etc. Two very simple suggestions which can really help us reduce our airport handling costs. Now, these are not rocket science. This is the way it is in the rest of the world. There's no such restriction in other countries. But in India, it's a fairly unique restriction that we have here, which adds to our costs. The second area in which a fairly simple regulatory change can really help airlines is if airlines are allowed to pool their remote flying requirements. In India, you have something called the RDG requirements, the route dispersal guidelines, which ensure that there's sufficient coverage to remote parts of the country. Now, the way things work is in certain parts of the country, only smaller aircraft really can efficiently serve the demand because the demand isn't very much. There's a certain category of RDG called 2A, which requires airlines to operate within the remote regions. So, for example, within the Northeast, within Jammu and Kashmir, etc. And putting a full-size A320 or a 180-seater, 160-seater on these routes is highly inefficient and usually loss-making. But airlines that have smaller aircraft, can serve those routes and actually make money on them. So there's been a proposal for a while that allow the airlines that can profitably serve those routes, allow them to sell their excess capacity because they may be operating more than is required by the RDG, to sell it to another airline which is not able to operate it on its own, and together you pool together and meet the requirement that the government has set. It's a very sensible suggestion in which the need of national integration and service to remote areas is met, but you don't force every airline to operate individually because it increases losses for the airlines that don't have the right aircraft or business model for those remote regions. And it also, frankly, very, very, unacceptably, it hurts the environment because you have large aircraft flying half empty in these regions just to fulfill this requirement. Airline is not making money. You're not really helping customers out there because, there's already enough service. And you're hurting the environment. So in today's day and age, I really think we need to sit back and reconsider these regulations and fix it. And the interesting thing is that most people, whether it's in the airlines or in the government, agree that these regulations could change. The thing is to get it changed and to convert that agreement into action. So just in these two simple areas, changing the regulations for security staff and changing the RDG so that you allow airlines to pool the RDG requirements will help airlines reduce costs and will help save the environment. So that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. See you again tomorrow. Take care.